This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian software like Jira, Confluence, and Trello help power global collaboration for all teams so they can accomplish everything that's impossible alone. Because individually we're great, but together we're so much better. Learn how to unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.com. Atlassian. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to learn more.
Welcome to Beyond the Arc. My name is Kevin O'Connor, and this is The Ringer's new weekly basketball show. Today, we're breaking down the play-in tournament and discussing the disastrous season for the Mavericks. Before that, let's get into my award ballot and the playoffs with The Ringer's Wosny Lambre. Woz, thank you so much for joining me today on Beyond the Arc, man.
I'm happy to be here on the maiden voyage of the show. We've been calling you Kevin O'Content for years, conquered Instagram, TikTok, editorial, podcast. There's nothing this guy doesn't do. Now he's a king, TV king. Let's do it.
Cheers, Woz. Brother. Thank you for joining me today.
So happy to be here.
Well, let's talk NBA awards and playoffs to start off Beyond the Arc here. NBA MVP obviously dominated NBA discourse in recent months, all season long, basically. On my ballot, I went with Fox 5th.
Wow.
Tatum 4th. Jokic 3rd. Embiid 2nd.
Wow.
And Giannis, after a lot of thought over the course of the weekend, ended up getting my vote for first for NBA MVP. And this was between Embiid and Giannis for me. Jokic was 3rd on my ballot. His defense took a big step back this year after I voted him the last 2 years. I gave Giannis the edge because I feel like he scored, more points per minute than Embiid this year, comparable efficiently. Embiid had a slight edge from the free throw line, true shooting percentage, but overall with Giannis this year, he's been a better rebounder, a better playmaker. He had a heavier load on defense with a more diverse role. He's a more versatile defender. He's on my all-defensive ballot as well. You can use him in any scheme. He can switch. He can blitz. He can hedge. He can play drop coverage as a 5. He led the NBA this year with defended field goal percentage against at the rim. Whereas Embiid, like Brook Lopez, who I don't have on my all-defensive ballot, is a drop defender. And granted, he's great at what he does. That type of role has more limitations on the defensive end. So Embiid is matchup proof, and Giannis is matchup proof on defense. Best player on the team, their leader, their energizer, and altogether he's the first player since Kareem and Wilt to have 30, 10, and 5 and over 50% from the field. So Giannis gets my vote here with Embiid being in close second place. What do you think, Woz?
I love that choice. It's the same choice I laid out on group chat on the Ringer NBA show. I picked Giannis for all of those reasons you described. I think he's the only person of the 5 finalists for you on your ballot that has a defensive player of the year case on top of carrying a heavy load on offense, right? This is not as efficient as his MVP seasons were, but okay, that's not saying a lot. We're talking about all-time level seasons that he's had before this on offense. And I think narratively, fair or unfair, these games in April, March, even February just mean more than December and November. That's just how that typically goes. And down the stretch of the season, the Bucks are going to finish with the best record in the NBA, and they're just rolling. They're clearly playing the best ball of any team right now. I think over the course of the season, you can say the Nuggets have played incredible stretches. You can say that about the Celtics, especially in the beginning. But closing the year as strong as they have and the way they are just dominating folks on defense and Giannis being the focal point of all of that, I think that bolsters his MVP case. And I think, the Embiid camp have been crying about, this is, traditionally, you don't give an MVP to a 6 seed and a blah, and it is. Giannis is the traditional pick for that. Like, he's literally checking off all of those boxes. The best team with the best record. If you go by point differential, it's not over the course of the season, there's no huge difference between Milwaukee and Philadelphia. I take that point, but I think just the way they're finishing is more impressive than anybody else.
And part of the reason why the Milwaukee Bucks are finishing so strong is because finally, after dealing with injuries to Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday early in the year, these guys look much more healthy at this point. So you mentioned they locked up the number 1 seed in the NBA, best record in the NBA. That means if they go to the finals, they'll keep home court. They're my pick to go to the finals in the East. I think they'll beat the Celtics in the East Finals. And they're my pick to go to the NBA Finals and win it as well. How far do you see the Bucks going in the postseason this year?
I think they're going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. However, my memory of the Bucks in the playoffs, I feel like it's a lot longer than everybody else's. I remember 3 years in a row watching these guys just be absolutely horrific in half-court offense for long stretches of series. These are the same guys. It's the same.
Haven't they improved though, Woz? Didn't they figure that out, beating the wall?
Listen.
Chris Middleton, Holiday now?
Listen. Drew Holiday specifically has had some terrible playoff moments on offense where shot selection is bad, and the shots that he's even getting off, hitting them at very low rates. And, he's going to be counted on to create one-on-one. So is Middleton. Like, these guys are going to have to deliver on offense. And it's for that reason, that limitation, I think Boston is so much more varied in how they can attack you offensively, as far as the different lineups they can put out there, the big man rotation. I really like both offensively and defensively. And so I think Boston, I still happen to be one of the last people on the Boston coming out of the Eastern Conference train, but I understand why somebody would pick the Bucks. Like I said, they've been playing the best ball going down the stretch of the regular season. And it's the last thing I'll say is there's never been a wider disparity between regular season and playoff basketball, right? Like, it's just almost like two different sports at this point. And I think in the crucible of the playoffs, where every team has you so scouted and figured out, and you've shown a propensity to throw up on yourself in the half court as a Bucks offense, I'm still a little skeptical that they can take it to the finals this year.
That's what I'm going to be so fascinated by with the Sixers first round series against the Nets, because even though, I'm picking Philly to win the series, they're going to be facing a Nets defense that has so much versatility. They're going to double, they're going to pressure Embiid, they're going to switch on ball screens with Harden and Embiid in their dominant pick and roll this year. That's going to be a really good litmus test for Philadelphia with what they're going to face against Boston. Similarly going to switch everything, and possibly if they do make the East Finals against the Bucks as well, who they'll probably do the same thing.
Yeah. Even in the cool thing about the Bucks for their matchup potentially with the Philadelphia, let's just say they get to the conference finals, is that they do have a varied assortment of bodies they can throw at Embiid. Whether you want to put Giannis on him, whether you want to put Brook Lopez on him, you can try Bobby Portis in spurts. I like the variations of bigs that they could throw at Embiid. As far as the Nets, I mean, yes, they present some fun issues and mashups for the Sixers, for us who want to see competitive basketball. But I think ultimately they're going to get swallowed up because they're not going to be able to score in even a relatively efficient manner.
Moving on to sixth man of the year, I'm picking Emmanuel quickly from the Knicks over Malcolm Brogdon and Malik Monk for second and third place, respectively. Knicks lose out on Donovan Mitchell last summer to the Cavaliers, and now those two teams are going to be matched up in the first round. Do the Knicks have any chance of an upset here, Woz?
No, I don't think so. I think even before the Julius Randle injury, I was picking them to lose in about 5 games to the Cavs. And that's not a knock on the Knicks. They've shown themselves to be a legitimate NBA playoff quality team. I think the job that Tibbs has done has been amazing. Jalen Brunson has taken the city by storm. Knicks fans, they'd kill somebody for Jalen Brunson at this point. He's played so well and he's legitimized that whole operation. But the things that they rely upon to generate offense, things like offensive rebounds, things like scoring in transition, that kind of stuff gets just taken out in the playoffs against a team that has the rebounding talent to do it. And, they're going to be invested in getting back on defense and boxing guys out. I just don't think they can rely on the things that they do in the regular season again to score in the playoffs. And then, Julius Randle, they were going to count very heavily on him. I don't know. I don't know that
he turned his ankle.
He hurt his ankle, but even if he wasn't hurt, I don't know how helpful long range contested twos are in a postseason setting, and that seems to be his specialty these days. But yeah, I never liked the matchup for them, and I do think more importantly, I think the Cavs are just a very high level talented team.
Yeah, I mean, the Cavs have a dominant defensive duo. Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Isaac Okoro shooting 40+% from three ever since early December. Garland, Mitchell, I mean, they are a dominant team, especially in the latter half of the season. I think if you look at the FanDuel Sportsbook betting odds for the finals, the Cavs are the...
You think that's the best value?
Best value bet. Mm-hmm. Best value bet. I would not pick them to win it. I think they, in all likelihood, lose to the Bucks in the second round. But if you're, thinking a team's going to go all the way, the Cavs have a pretty good number for the team going to the finals and winning it. For Rookie of the Year, I got Paolo Banchero over Jalen Williams and Walker Kessler. Do you think the Magic are set up best of all the teams that didn't make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference?
I mean, if you ask our colleague Justin Verrier, they've got a top 3 future in the league, perhaps. But no, I think they finally got a young core that you can actually get legitimately excited about. I think Franz Wagner this year
he's so good, man.
And he showed an ability to play up in position that I think there was some questions if, maybe we could play him at the 4. Maybe we can even get spicy and do some small lineups with him at the 5. I think he's shown an ability to scale upwards in position, which is exciting. And Paolo, even as a rookie, as young as he is, he's shown that he could be a high usage offensive hub.
How many 6'10" guys are there that can move as fluidly as he does?
Exactly.
He's a special talent.
It's his movement, his agility, his athleticism. That's what it is for me. It's the feel. It's when you combine the size that he brings with the feel of the game that this guy has. Yeah, that's legitimately exciting stuff. I really like the Magic and what they got.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think they get the best young core in the East. In the West, I would say it's the Utah Jazz. I have Lauri Markkanen as most improved player of the year. Tough choice over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who I had second on my ballot, but
I think De'Aaron Fox
could be in that.
To go from a fringe, maybe even borderline guy to he's on your MVP ballot. Oftentimes, that's the hardest jump to make from like, oh, I'm a really good player to like, no, I'm great now.
Yeah.
I think he's another guy that has a strong case, but Lowry.
Jalen Brunson, too, another one.
Jalen Brunson, of course, with the increased workload. Bridges, especially in his Nets moments where he's just filling it up as a high-volume scorer. But man, the Lowry thing was such a revelation this year, and
he goes from like a fine role player to an all-star, and maybe even going to be on a lot of all NBA ballots this year.
100%, and the way that he's doing it in all of these varied ways, and in a way that, like, if Utah were to somehow get a legitimate superstar type of guy in there,
Victor Wembanyama with those ninth best lottery odds was.
Hey, why not? You can see the case of how Lowry fits next to a very high usage superstar type of guy. I actually left him off of my third team All-NBA in favor of Julius Randle, just straight off of the pure volume of stats that Randle has accumulated. But if I have a real team with real playoff chances, I don't see how you pick Julius Randle over Lauri Markkanen in that setting, So he's just been incredible this year.
For Coach of the Year, I went with Mike Brown. I had J.B. Bickerstaff with the Cavs second, Mark Daigneault from the Thunder third. I just think, with what Mike Brown did going from the Warriors as an assistant coach for a long time there to the Kings, it's amazing to see the way he kind of took some of those Warriors concepts, split action, the movement, the cutting with Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk and kind of incorporated that with a lot of the DH shows with Sabonis that he did in Indiana, that you see Jokic do with Denver, that a lot of teams running with their bigs who can play make, the Heat with Bam Adebayo. The way those styles blended together, it just like they have the number one offensive rating in all of the NBA this year. It's beautiful to watch.
Yeah, I think that's the coolest part is that we tend to not think of coaches as guys that can improve the way we do as players. We don't think of them as guys that can evolve and become just way better at what they're tasked with doing. Mike Brown, before he got to Sacramento and all his previous stops, he had a reputation for being a defensive-minded coach. All of his teams would always overachieve on defense. And there was this sense that, especially with the Cavs in the early LeBron era, that he was just rolling the ball out and being like, LeBron, go figure it out, right? And this team is the exact opposite of that. They are so scheme heavy and they have a system. And it's the opposite of what we had known Mike Brown to be. So
do they have enough to beat the Warriors in the first round, though?
I just find it hard to believe that a team this young and inexperienced in those settings is going to come out and beat the the definition of the grizzled, playoff hardened vets. It's not even that these vets have been there before. Their core has done it together, which is another level of experience. It's like these are the guys that I've done it with. And so that continuity in the playoffs, 4 championships.
Hard to bet against that, right?
I can't see myself doing that.
And with Golden State, we've seen them. They have the number 3 defensive rating since March 20th. They had a huge win over the Sixers. It's a small sample. They faced some, bad teams over that stretch. Number 11 in defensive rating since the trade deadline as well. They've trended up at the least defensively. Like in that game against the Thunder, they gave up 79 in the first half. And then they flipped the switch at halftime and dominated the second half. That was one of those games where you're like, okay, they can turn it on defensively when they need to. And that's why Draymond Green, he got Michael Pina's vote for Defensive Player of the Year over on the Ringer. Yeah, I mean, I appreciated it. I think I did not choose him. I chose Jaren Jackson Jr. for Defensive Player of the Year. You called Jaren Jackson Jr. last week on Through the Ringer with Tate Frazier the biggest X factor entering the postseason. With Memphis, they might be without Steven Adams. We saw him practicing before a game recently, despite reports that he'll be out for some time now. Jackson's going to be pivotal to Memphis' chances, regardless of who they face in the play. And it could be the Lakers, too.
Yeah, I think the thing about Jaren Jackson is not just his what he does for them defensively, where he's the anchor oftentimes. It's as offensively, he needs to be a pressure valve because the Grizzlies, what they do is they put pressure on the rim. And so, smart teams are going to divert a lot of resources towards protecting the basket. Like Ja Morant's the most impossible guy to keep out of the paint. So he has to make shots. He's going to be counted upon offensively to make shots for them. So that's why I think it's a big deal that he can stay on the floor, that he can play 36, 40 minutes a night because he's going to be so vital to what they do. Again, we know what he does defensively. I think he's Defensive Player of the Year. You think he's Defensive Player of the Year. But on offense, he's going to have to shoulder a huge burden because let's face it, Dylan Brooks is, you don't want
Brooks taking a ton of shots.
And Bane, he's a great player, but again, he can't be counted on to be just some steady offensive hub. He's not like some Jaylen Brown type, say, next to Tatum, right? And so I think Jaren Jackson is going to have to step up to the plate on offense, too. He's going to have to beat up on mismatches if they try to put smalls on him. And again, as a stretch big, he's going to actually have to stretch, actually have to knock down his long-range shots.
Woz, you'll be back a little bit later talking about the play-in tournament, and we'll hand out a parlay as well.
Can't wait to do it.
Welcome back to the Ringer Beyond the Arc on FanDuel TV. Over the final week of the regular season, the Dallas Mavericks decided it was time to tank out of the play-in tournament and into the lottery to increase their odds of keeping a top 10 protected pick in this year's draft. Team decision makers across the NBA view this blatant tanking as a Hail Mary strategy to save their team because after years of mistakes, the long-term future of Luka Doncic has never been more uncertain. Of course, The Mavs want to keep Luka forever, but what he's seen so far is a franchise botching roster construction, an unstable front office, and an owner tangled in controversy. And now he's been part of a tanking team. ESPN's Tim McMahon reports Mavericks sources fear that Luka will ask out in 2024 if the situation doesn't improve. Luka claims publicly he's happy, though. Here's what he said this weekend in response to the report.
Somebody said that I was going to address the Kuwait trade. It was funny, because I didn't know that was true. I didn't say it. I'm happy here, so there's nothing to worry.
I'm happy here. Reminds me of when Kyrie Irving said those exact words in Cleveland, and when Paul George said I'm a Pacer, or when Anthony Davis said he was staying in New Orleans, and so on, because superstar movement is almost inevitable. Stars stay in one place like Dirk Nowitzki are the exception. Even before this drama, NBA executives have long speculated about Miami or big markets like LA and New York as targets for Luka if things soured in Dallas, and now they wonder, with only 3 guaranteed years remaining on his contract, how much longer will Luka's patience last? The Mavs whiffed on Kristaps Porzingis, let Jalen Brunson walk for nothing, and acquired Kyrie with no promises he'll stay. And even if he does, considering Kyrie's turbulent history, can Luka really expect a better result in Dallas? Even after getting Kyrie, the roster still needs a better center and several wings. Their defense was an absolute abomination, devoid of rim protection, size, and versatility, and Jason Kidd's offensive schemes lacked much imagination, leading to diminishing returns when Kyrie was often reduced to just a three-point shooter in the corner. But Mavs owner Mark Cuban said Kidd isn't to blame, and you know what? I actually kind of agree. The person most to blame is the person who brought in a twice-failed coach and a GM with zero front office experience and has his own fingerprints all over every roster decision the franchise makes. Kidd might have run some predictable after-timeout plays and mishandled some rotations, but he was also dealt a tough hand with this roster assembled by Cuban and GM Nico Harrison. Kidd even admitted the call to tank games came from up top.
We're trying to build a championship team, and sometimes you got to take a step back. These are decisions that are made from my bosses, and we got to follow them. And we trust Cuban and Nico are going to put the pieces together to put us in a position to win a championship. And so that's just starting the process today.
The tanking was actually supposed to begin sooner. FanDuel's own Shams Charania reported in early April that the Mavs were considering shutting down Luka and Kyrie, but that didn't happen right away. My sources say that in late March, Dallas coaches met with players to discuss a plan for Markieff Morris and JaVale McGee to play heavier minutes. That is when the tanking was supposed to begin, but Luka and especially Kyrie were agitated that the team was waving the white flag and both refused to sit. Luka said publicly that if they have a chance to win, he'll play. So it wasn't until the Mavs kept losing games that the key players sat out, except for Luka, who played just one quarter on their Friday game last week because it was Slovenian night in Dallas. Cuban admitted to tanking during the 2017-18 season, and the NBA fined him $600K. That was the year they ended up with Luka, so it was worth it. But after 5 years with him and another tank job, Luka has never lost as badly as he has now in his entire career, even going back overseas. Luka needs to take some accountability too, though. Luka must embrace screening and cutting like he did overseas. He must maintain better conditioning, and he must be better than one of the league's worst defenders. But because of his brilliant offense, ultimately, it's on the Mavs to rectify their blunders. They're left with limited assets, though. They can trade 2 future firsts, pick swaps, and mildly valuable young guys. This is why they tanked. Their pick is top 10 protected as the final owed piece to the Knicks for KP. So their only real silver lining is the chance of leaping into the top 4 and possibly snagging Victor Wembanyama. But 2 firsts don't go as far as they used to, though, and any team that wants Dallas's distant first would be betting that Luka leaves in free agency in 2026 or is traded even sooner than that. I bet the Mavs will get 2 years to fix this until the trade deadline in 2025 or that summer. But there's a lot more that needs to change than 1 or 2 trades can fix. The Mavs gotta hope that Luka will show the same loyalty that Dirk once did. But Dirk also never had such a weak supporting cast, never missed the playoffs during his prime, and never had to play in such an erratic situation. It's undeniable that the pressure in Dallas is mounting. We'll be back in a minute with Woz to talk more about the Mavs.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need. Have coverage options to protect the things you value most. File a claim right on the State Farm mobile app and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
This podcast is brought to you by AT&T Fiber with All-Fi. Something tells me that the guy watching sports for 13 hours straight on Sunday, who then stays up watching the recaps of those 13 hours, then calls his friends to talk about it, is definitely going to notice that half-a-second delay.
Get AT&T Fiber with All-Fi and watch sports any time of day from anywhere in your house. Live like a gigillionaire. Limited availability in select areas. Go to att.com/hypergig to check eligibility. Coverage may require extenders at additional charge.
All right, welcome back, Woz. Just heard me talking about the Dallas Mavericks and their shaky future at this point.
Bleak, according to that monologue.
What's your number one takeaway?
I like that you dispersed blame in various areas. I think number one, it starts at the top. Mark Cuban is ultimately the decision maker, and he's been incompetent. You can go back to that scandal that erupted around Measury and all of that stuff that was happening in the back office, the decisions they've made personnel-wise, the way the entire Haralabob Vulgaris situation was handled. I just think Cuban has been a mess. I don't think there's any read on him as the CEO of this team that can be a positive one since the Dirk championship. They got blessed.
That's a long time ago.
13 years ago, okay? Barack Obama still had black hairs on his head in those days. They got blessed in the sense that 3 teams were foolish enough to pass up on Luka Doncic, and this life-changing, franchise-defining superstar falls in their lap, and all they've done is bungle that opportunity ever since. J. Kidd, I think he's had his moments where he's, done a good job.
Diving on the pile, celebrating with his team.
Yes,
he's had some good moments.
I love that. But also, when he goes in a press conference and he says, I'm not the savior, which is a not very thinly veiled.
I'm watching this team just like you guys are.
Okay, this is not ideal coaching maneuvers and tactics. And then, of course, Luka, he bears blame, right? It's, coming into the season out of shape all the time, not being as flexible in his approach to the game as far as being more comfortable off the ball, maybe setting some screens every now and then.
Wouldn't that be nice with Kyrie especially?
I mean, seriously, planting somebody on a screen, being a better cutter. He comes out of those kind of offensive systems in Europe. I don't know why he's come to the NBA and decided he's some just like ball hogging, I don't never move or do anything else.
He dominates doing it. Like I'm sure that's part of it. I mean, like he's a historic offensive player. In the postseason, his first 2 years, he's averaging 35, 9, and 9 against the Clippers. It's just a first-round exit, which is part of the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, Luka can be better despite how great he's been. And if you're Luka, like, you have to recognize that you can be better. But also, like, everything good that's happened with Dallas from the, first-round runs, going toe-to-toe with Kawhi Leonard, that's because of you. Going to the Western Conference Finals, you beat a Jazz team that was about to implode with a little help from Brunson, who's gone. Yep. Then you beat a Suns team that was injured. They had their COVID outbreak. Mm-hmm. You're dominating that series. Then you get just plastered by the Warriors. But getting there is because of you. So Luka needs to recognize it's tough, that I can be better despite how great I've been. But at the same time, he's in a spot right now where everything around him has been just completely botched. So if you're Luka right now, you're under contract through at least 2026. How patient, if you're advising Luka how patient do you think he should be? Tim McMahon on ESPN said 2024, the Mavs fear he could demand a trade. I don't think Dallas would want to trade him. I think they'd just be in a situation like Brooklyn. Yeah. Brooklyn, KD wanted out last summer. It didn't happen until the deadline after Kyrie ended up leaving. I don't think Dallas would want to trade Luka in 2024. Maybe 2025 trade deadline, 2025 offseason. Is that how long they have?
I feel like whenever this stuff gets out that Team X is on the clock because a superstar may demand out. I think what folks at home need to understand is that while these guys are under contract, they have a disproportionate effect on how things go within a franchise. So when you say, well, Dallas can just hold on to him because they have his rights, that may be the case. But in the meantime, if this guy is not happy and he's willing to be unprofessional about his unhappiness, your situation and operation is cooked. It becomes completely toxic. If a guy who's the 12th man on the bench sits around and sulks all the time and isn't pleasant to be around, it doesn't matter. He's insignificant to the fortunes of the team. When arguably the second greatest player in the history of Dallas Mavericks hoops is not happy, it's the way that permeates everything that's happened is just so wholly different. So they do have to take that seriously. However, I don't think an artificial deadline placed by an unhappy player is something you have to necessarily adhere to. I use the example of Kobe Bryant. I remember when he was talking about shipping Andrew buying him out, get Luol Deng in here, all of this other stuff, or like get me out of here. The Lakers were just like, no.
Yeah.
No.
Which is what Dallas will probably say.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So they have pressure, and it's real. And you want your superstar to be operating at peak capacity. You want him to feel like what he's doing every day is a worthwhile endeavor because you guys have been so competent in your capacity as management. But at the same time, Luka's got to hold up his end of the bargain too.
Well, Dallas entered the season with the 12th highest finals odds, according to FanDuel, and they enter the offseason with the 10th highest lottery odds. The biggest disappointment in the NBA, didn't even make the play-in. Let's talk about some teams that actually did with our play-in, parlay, and predictions. In the Eastern Conference we have the 7-seed Heat versus the 3-seed Hawks. Miami was 3-1 against Atlanta this season. I published a story on theringer.com on Monday about Atlanta and how their front office, now led by Quinn Snyder, who also their head coach, has the green light to do whatever they want this offseason. I can't imagine they trade Trae Young. You're always betting against, superstar moves. Those are really hard to make happen. But Atlanta's in a position now with, after everything that happened this season, Chris Haynes reporting in December that if they don't make inroads in the postseason, Trae Young could be the one to demand a trade. Their owner in March saying, nobody's off the table, even after being asked specifically about Trae Young.
Yeah.
Like, after everything that's happened this year, there's no team in the play-in with more at stake than the Hawks, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes in our business we kind of have to read the tea leaves, Kev, and so I see Quinn Snyder, who is a well-respected coach as far as people believe. He has a reputation around the league for being impeccable at X's and O's, at preparation. His playbook is like legendarily thick. This guy has so many tricks in the bag. He has a pristine reputation for like his coaching acumen, right? So what does that mean? That means he would have his pick of quality jobs, right? And so there's money. Of course, we all work for money, but there's also a matter of influence,
power.
And power.
Yeah,
How influential can I be in this operation? And I see he signs a long-term deal with the Hawks, a team that employs a guy in Trae Young who's murdered 2 coaches already. And I'm like, why would a guy with this many options be willing to go to Atlanta? It has to be the case that management will back him over the player who's already axed 2 coaches, okay? And so I'm not surprised by your reporting, what you're getting out of your reporting to hear that Quinn Snyder, he's holding the cards here. He can decide if Trae Young gets to be here or not long term. And so, yeah, Trae Young, I think he has a lot to prove. I, like everybody else, enjoyed what he did in the postseason in 2021.
Super fun, especially against the Knicks.
I thought he was
drama.
Excellent.
Yeah.
The Hawks effectively, talk about murdered Ben Simmons' career. He hasn't been heard from since. However, they've been a huge disappointment at every single turn since. That's 2 years of utter disappointment. The money they've spent, the trades they've made to bring in talent, and they have underachieved. And so, yeah, I tend to agree with you that the stakes are really high for the Hawks.
So they face the Heat, and then in the 9-10 game, we have the Raptors and Bulls. What teams do you think end up getting the 7 and the 8 seed out of this play-in tournament, was?
I got to say, ultimately, I do think these are all lambs being led to the slaughter. They're going to get absolutely destroyed and cooked when they do make it to the actual NBA playoffs. But yeah, I think the Heat have proven that they just own the Hawks at this point.
They get to 7. I'm with you there.
They just pants them every single time. And so the Heat, they will be facing the Boston Celtics. And I tend to think the Raptors are going to do this.
Oh, so you think Hawks don't even make it at all?
I don't think they make it out of the play-in. I really don't. I think the Hawks are going to beat the Bulls, and then, I think the Raptors are going to beat the Bulls, and then ultimately they're going to take down the Hawks.
I get the Bulls beating the Raptors. Their defense has been much better. Caruso, an all-defensive guy.
Defense, huh? Okay.
It's been much better. I mean, you can't trust Vooch in the postseason necessarily, but I don't think the Raptors are a team structured to beat him.
And DeRozan and Zach LaVine, that's the defense you want to place your trust in?
Number 5 defensive rating on the year, Waz. I know it's the regular season, but much better than anticipated.
Okay, got you. Got you. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same players. Okay, that's it. Just wanted to get back in there.
So you got the Raptors getting the 8th seed, the Heat getting 7. We both agree with the Hawks being eliminated here.
Yeah, I think so.
And that would be really interesting entering the offseason if that were to happen. In the Western Conference, we have the Lakers and the Timberwolves, and a report came out on Monday from Adrian Wojnarowski that Rudy Gobert, who punched his teammate on the final day of the regular season, and then apologized in a group text and tweeted about it, saying his emotions got the best of him. Minnesota is not having him travel with the team to LA for their Tuesday night game against the Lakers. I'm picking the Lakers in this one regardless, even if he was there.
Yeah, it's one of those things, Kev, where one, you committed this is about as serious an infraction as it gets. The biggest game of your season, you're punching your teammate in the huddle. You can't get control of yourself enough that you don't do something like that in that moment. A guy who's been in the NBA for a decade, that's just utter embarrassment. And then the team goes out and wins without you in their biggest game of the season. So I don't see why he should travel. He should be suspended. He should have to spend time away from the team. And think about how reckless he was. Quite frankly, I don't see any other option. I believe in this choice as far as the Timberwolves. But yeah, I think they're so shorthanded. No Naz Reid. McDaniel hurt his hand.
He punched the wall. I mean,
not good. Not good.
What a terrible day for them, man.
Especially a team this year who have been making boneheaded mental mistakes on the court all year long.
Mike Conley has helped there, though.
Yeah, immensely. Yes. Immensely. He's professionalized their operations in a lot of ways, but I do think ultimately they lose to the Lakers for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So then in the other 9-10 game, we have the Thunder and the Pelicans, two really young teams. It's surprising to see OKC here, but with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander taking the leap to, borderline top 5 MVP candidate, and no doubt should be on every single All-NBA ballot. Here they are. They got a really nice young team. We talked about Jalen Williams as a Rookie of the Year candidate. Like, they have a ton of guys.
Josh
Giddey, right?
Who I famously have championed since the beginning of his career.
For sure.
Just kidding.
You absolutely did, Waz. I'll back you up. No, I'm just kidding. You definitely didn't. But then with the Pelicans, Brandon Ingram has been on an absolute heater as a scorer recently. They couldn't shoot at all on Sunday in their loss. Who do you have in this 9-10, and which teams do you think end up the 7 and the 8?
So for me, I think Shai is the best player in that group, right? The Timberwolves, the Pelicans, and OKC. And he's had stretches of this season where he's looked utterly dominant.
Oh, yeah. Can't stop him getting to the basket.
Literally just the most unstoppable guy. As much as I love Anthony Edwards, and he has moments where he looks like he's as good as any wing in the NBA, right? But I think Shai does it so much more consistently right now, and he's just got that look that in these big moments, he understands the task at hand, and he's been delivering all season long. Like, you just look up the amount of 30-point games he's got this season, and he makes it look so easy. I just believe in what Shai's going to be able to do in those big spots, and I think ultimately they'll grab that 8 seed.
I'm with you there. We agree. So you get Lakers 7, Thunder 8, which means for my play and parlay, that's what I'm going with in the West. And then in the East, going with the Heat for the 7, and then the Bulls for the 8th and their vaunted defense. With the Lakers, if they face the Grizzlies in the first round, real quick, Do you think with LA, they've shown enough best record in the NBA since the trade deadline tied with the Grizzlies?
Okay.
Have they shown enough in the second half of the year that you think they could go all the way to the NBA Finals?
I think the Lakers are so high variance in what can make them good. Their defense has been incredible, top 5 defense for about 2.5 to 3 months now as far as defensive efficiency. I just think on offense, they have to make shots. Like, they're going to be counting on that. The thing about the Grizzlies is, like, Ja Morant's going to get to the cup. He's going to get to the free throw line. They are going to offensive rebound. I think even with or without Steven Adams, I think what they do is so much more consistent than what the Lakers have. That being said, I think the duo of LeBron and AD are better than any 2 individual players on the Grizzlies combined, right? Especially in a setting where LeBron can walk the ball up every single possession, dictate the terms of each and every possession, and shorten this game and make it a knock 'em out, drag 'em out sort of slugfest. They give themselves a good chance. I just think ultimately the Grizzlies' overall talent is going to prevail. The young legs, the athleticism, and the Lakers. Look, Rob Pelinka ruined this team by trading for Russell Westbrook and trading all of their wing depth 100%. He deserves credit for what they did to bring in this group of guys, and they've upped their athleticism so much within this deal, especially on the wings. But I just think ultimately Memphis is going to wear these guys down, and the youth is going to prevail.
I'm going to go with the Lakers in 5 or 6.
Wow. What? Lay the case for me.
I mean, I think with LA right now, their defense, you said it's dominant.
Yes,
you're right about
is.
that. I think if you're relying on Steven Adams to get by, maybe it says a lot about your team, but Adams was so important to that Grizzlies team, especially on the interior with their defense, how it allowed Jaren Jackson Jr. to roam and help off ball, block shots like crazy. Offensively, the screens he sets for Ja Morant. I just think with LA, their defense has been so good. They're going to be able to contain Ja Morant, and their offense, they're going to crash the boards. They're just going to overpower Memphis. They have such a great size advantage and interior advantage. I think, their wings have improved a lot, Woz.
Yeah,
it's Austin Reeves, say what you want about all the fouls drawn. That guy is legit, man.
Yes,
he's been a bucket getter in college, in high school, at D3. It's just all translating now with the NBA. They got shooters now. They're going to be streaky. Beasley, Hachimura, D'Lo can be a shot creator for you. I just think the Lakers have so many different ways that they can attack you and generate offense now that their true potential is going to show in the postseason.
I'm not mad at the pick. I just really think the Grizzlies have, they've played in some playoff series at this point, so I'm not as worried as their youth as I would normally be. And again, I just think the relentlessness of what Ja does, even in a playoff setting, even when the court shrinks, he's still able to get to the cup with regularity. And I just think that's something you can count on. LeBron, his propensity to score in the one-on-one, in his advanced age, the guy is banging down 40's door, KOC. Like, at a certain point, that stuff is going to matter. The foot is going to matter in his ability to score one-on-one. If LeBron can score one-on-one consistently, I like the Lakers as much as I like anybody in the West. I just have a hard time believing he's going to be able to do that on a bum foot at his advanced age.
Well, we're going to find out starting Tuesday night with their matchup against the Wolves and see if they even get out of the play. And Woz, thank you so much for joining me on the first episode of the Beyond the Arc.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be the first guest, man. I'm happy for you, brother.
Thank you.